right, hello everybody. Welcome into Inside the Smoky Mountain Conference presented by Team FYN Sports. We are headed into week 2. Week 1 is over, and if you're a fan of the Smoky Mountain Conference, you are glad week 1 is over. Wasn't a great week for the conference. The Braves from Cherokee picked up the W, but it took double overtime to beat North Buncombe. Everybody else went home with their tail tucked between their legs. Not a great night. Not a great night for anybody. We had teams give up 61, 42, 37. Had 2 teams get shut out. But you did have that thriller in Cherokee. Even though, nobody looked very good, including Cherokee, that was able to take home the victory. Not really ready to bury anybody after 1 week. I think some of these teams played really good football teams. We knew going into this year that we had some young Smoky Mountain Conference teams, but we learned some things about our teams in week 1, and some of the things we learned weren't good things, but a lot of stuff, especially for the teams at the top half of our conference, a lot of the stuff that went wrong was fixable. But let's start with the lone bright spot, the lone win. Cherokee beats North Buncombe 66-60 in double overtime. That is a preposterous Big 12 football game score from 2016. Kingston Welch was insane on the ground. 27 carries, 208 yards, 6 touchdowns. The most impressive thing for me about Cherokee's 66-point offensive night is that they lost quarterback Dawson Panther early in the game. If you look at their stats, they weren't able to throw the ball very much, and that's because he was out. You're trailing 23-14 at halftime, and basically with Panther being out, the game plan that you walked into the stadium with is pretty much gone. And so they pivoted their game plan to give Kingston Welch the football and then give it to him again, and then give it to him again, and then give it to him again. Another thing that was good from Cherokee was their special teams. They had a blocked extra point, which is huge when a game goes into overtime. They had a 94-yard kickoff return from Howling Crane. But the 66 points is great. 66 points is awesome. Giving up 60, not so great. But when your starting quarterback goes down, you face that much adversity in one football game, you'll take the win every single time. Coaching staff in Cherokee deserves a lot of credit. Those kids deserve a lot of credit. They beat North Buncombe. North Buncombe historically not a great team, but still a win is a win. And you're able to battle through some things that you haven't and get over the hump. It's something that we haven't seen from Cherokee in quite some time. So let's hear from head coach of the Cherokee Braves here. Really quick, we will get his thoughts on what happened Friday night. All right, here with Coach Geyer, head coach of the Cherokee Braves. Coach, congratulations coming off your first win as head coach of the Braves and a double overtime thriller against North Buncombe. Take us through that game just very briefly.
Yeah, man, one of those that you really don't ever find any calm during that game until it's finally over. North Buncombe's scoreboard actually ended up getting struck by lightning earlier in the week. So you start the game knowing that there's no clock, no scoreboard, and you really don't understand how much you need that scoreboard. You need that time until it's not there, and you're having to ask the official, every so often, hey, what's the time? What's the score? Luckily, my manager is very good with numbers, and he was able to stay in my hip pocket and keep me updated with score, man. But, just one of those ones, we struggled with some injuries early on, losing a guy like Dawson Panther early. Really, really handcuffed us defensively, even though he is our starting quarterback. Because our backup quarterback's our middle linebacker. So having to move Dylan Beam from middle linebacker to quarterback really kind of handcuffed us defensively because Dylan is the kind of guy, he's the heart and soul of that defense. He's the guy that leads the charge over there on that side. And then, losing Chula Howling Crane early, arguably one of the best wide receivers, defensive backs in the conference, in the area, with a dislocated shoulder. Losing him also really hurt. But I just North Buncombe's a good football team. We jumped out 14-0 early. They didn't blink. They kept coming back, kept battling, and I got to give props to our young men. Our young men faced a lot of adversity early on, throughout much of the game, and just kept battling back. Going into halftime down 9. Had a good long conversation with them in there. The assistant coaches made good adjustments at halftime to be able to come out and to really, to put up 66 points, throwing the ball 8 times in the game with 1 completion.
Yeah.
We're relying on Kingston Welch, relying on that offensive line, which we knew we would have to do coming in, but just being able to rely on them and know that, hey, when we get in the shootout, we can still run the ball was, it was a very comforting thing. And defensively, when we needed it, they stepped up and made big plays. The second overtime, had a pass interference call, gave them another shot to score, and then Noah Waddy comes up with a big interception to, in a sense, ice the game for us. And then we were able to go out there and on the second play of the second overtime, punch it in for the game winner, courtesy of, again, Kingston Welch. It was good for our guys to have a game like that. It was not good for me, not good for my heart and my sleep that night, but it was good for our guys just to say, hey, look, we can battle back when things are tough.
I think there's also a blocked extra point in that game, which obviously a game that goes in double overtime, that plays a huge deal in it. Your special team, ran back at score?
Yes, sir. The first kickoff of the second half, Mr. Hallencrane actually ran back a 94-yard kickoff return, and being down 3 at that point, much to my offensive line coach's kind of recommendation, I rolled the dice and said, hey, we're going to go for 2 at this point, and we're not going to kick another field goal, which we did not kick another PAT the rest of the night. We just kept the offense out there and said, go get us 2 points, and they were able to.
Yeah, everybody that I've talked to that was at that game says, it was back and forth pretty much the whole time.
It was. I joked with some friends of mine that, man, we just, at one point we just decided to take the defense off the field and basically go against the air. But no, again, North Buncombe's got some weapons. They are a much better team than they were last year. And, we saw some things that obviously we need to correct, which is never a bad thing to see week 1. So, I think we're going to be just fine when it all comes down.
So obviously you're way up here after such an emotional football game Friday night. How do you level the troops and get ready for this coming week?
Really, we just I told them in the huddle after the game Friday night, I said, y'all enjoy this. I said, enjoy this tonight, enjoy this tomorrow, because that there are not many games like that. All the years I've been a part of football, I've never experienced a game like that. 100 something odd points scored, double overtime. That's it. That's a crazy game. So it's definitely one that we had to take some time to enjoy. But knowing too, hey, this week we've got another quality opponent in Tuscola. And I think our kids have done a good job of compartmentalizing that, with the guidance of the assistant coaches that we have, just saying, hey, look, okay, we're 1-0, but this week it's a completely new ball game. It's a completely new opponent. So we've got to be able to, just kind of say, hey, that one's done and over with. And Monday when we came in, we really didn't spend a whole lot of time watching film of that game. We never spend a whole lot of time watching the last game when we come in for film session on Monday. That's more of a, hey, that's behind us now. Time to focus on this week.
Well, one last thing before we let you go. I talked to Kingston in the preseason, asked him what some of his goals were. I asked him 1,000 yards was a goal of his. He said actually 2,000 yards was a goal of his, and he seems like he is well on his way. 200 and something yards in the first game, 6 touchdowns, and I know that he is a vocal leader for the team. So can you speak to what it means to have a guy like that on your offensive side of the ball, and also what it means to you guys to have the numbers this year for him not to be forced to play every play both ways?
Absolutely. I mean, that's huge. First of all, to have a guy like Kingston Welch, who is your guy in some senses. I mean, you never want to say he's the guy because we've got guys all over the place, in my opinion. But he is one of the guys that shows up and puts the work in and does it the right way, and is just just a guy that you can count on. I mean, again, 27 carries, 6 touchdowns, 4 2-point conversions, had a couple kickoff returns when we needed it. Just a guy that we can say, hey, look, we need something here. We need you to get out there and get the troops going. It's huge for us. And for him to be able to have a night like that, I mean, the kid was determined. I could see it in his eyes when we stepped off the bus in Weaverville. He was ready to go, and he's still ready to go. He feels. I asked him yesterday. I said, "How you feel? Are you sore? You hurting? How we feeling?" He said, "Coach, I'm ready for another 200 yards this Friday." So to have that mindset, to have the ability to hand him the ball as much as we did, and him still be taken care of in a sense, it's a great thing. And to really be that leader who leads by example, more often than he does vocally. He's just a guy that leads by example for these guys. Has been huge for us. He's again, a great kid. You couldn't ask for a better kid to be able to do that, to have that kind of night, and to hopefully have the kind of season that he's wanting to have, and we in a sense need him to have. So just could not happen to a better kid.
All right, Coach. Well, you got a big one coming up, Tuscola Friday. We wish you the best of luck. Thanks, as always, for taking time and talking to us.
Absolutely, Jake. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Coach.
All right.
Good to hear from Coach. We love having him on every week. It's always good insight from him. Being a young coach, he's fun to talk football with back and forth. But moving on, also we will talk about next week's games or this week's games, tomorrow's games at the end of the show. Right now we're just recapping what happened this past Friday night. Moving to Swain County, Smoky Mountain beats Swain 42-6. It's pretty simple when you look at the box score. When you watch some huddle film, Swain could not stop the run. Smoky Mountain averaged 11 yards a carry, which, 317 yards, 11 yards a carry on the ground. That is Smoky Mountain Conference football, which Swain County could not stop. At some point, you've got to tackle somebody. You've got to, dig in and stop giving up such big chunk plays on the ground. The bright spot for Swain County was Caden Sawyer. He had 8 carries, 113 yards, and a touchdown. So there is something there. But when you do look at the box score, you kind of wonder why just 8 carries for this guy. He's averaging 14 yards every time he touches it. Probably want to give him double-digit carries this coming week. So because overall, Swain's just got to get better offensively, defensively. You saw some bright spots offensively, but defensively, there's no scheme on earth that's going to save you if you're giving up 11 yards a carry every time somebody hands the ball off. Same kind of thing in Andrews. Madison beats Andrews 21-0. So you've got a defense that played pretty well, but the Wildcats ran for 35 yards, 35 rushing yards from Andrews, 290 rush yards for Madison. That's pretty much all you need to know about that football game. Andrews got to find some offense, defense play. I mean, giving up 21 points when your offense is not doing anything is not a bad night defensively. But they threw the ball more than we're used to seeing them throw, which I knew that was kind of some adjustments they've made to their schemes going into this year. But you've got to figure something out offensively. That's a game you should compete in, and that's a game that if you want to be a contender, you've got to win. So can't get outrushed 290-35 and expect to win the football game. Moving on, Rosman down 31-8 at halftime to Owen. They lose 37-14. I did like what Braylon Owen showed, though, 98 yards on 10 carries. That's something the Tigers can work with. But just like Swain and Andrews, got to stop giving up explosive runs. Hayesville goes to Towns County. Towns County defends their home turf, hangs 60 on Hayesville, wins 61-20. When you look at the box score, though, if I told you before this game against Towns County, if I told Hayesville, before the game started, you're going to score 20 points and have over 300 yards of offense, you'd probably feel pretty good about your chances. That's not the case when you give up 60 points. Did come away encouraged by a couple things from Hayesville. I think offensively you can find something with Lance Coker and Crow Collins. I mean, 180 yards for Coker through the air. Crow Collins, 140 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. Coker did not throw an interception. He played pretty good. The Coker to Collins connection it's got big play potential for sure. Just defensively, they've got to find an answer, and that is a recurring theme for all of our Smoky Mountain Conference teams through this first week. But once again, everybody showed bright spots. Everybody showed fixable things, especially these next 2 teams that we're going to talk about. Tuscola beats Robbinsville 23-0, and obviously getting shut out is not a great thing, but you played well defensively. Tuscola had 270 yards. One of their touchdowns came on a fumble recovery, return for a touchdown. Robbinsville's defense definitely gave them a chance, but offensively they've definitely got to move some pieces around, find some things, because offensively Robbinsville's scheme has always been pretty simple: line it up, run it. You know they're going to run it. You know what they're going to run, but they've been able to traditionally ground and pound you to death. But 1 for 10 on third down is not going to work. So little things, little mistakes. Watching some of their film, there were some reads that weren't made that could have went for scores. There were some blocking miscues that kept them from picking up big third down plays, some penalties that brought the ball back. Lot of fixable things, though, when you watch that Robbinsville film. Doesn't get any easier this week. You've got a road trip to Franklin as the Panthers, coming off a big 42-7 win over Murphy. They open up their new stadium Friday night at home against Robbinsville. But speaking of Franklin, they beat Murphy 42-7. Don't think anybody's really shocked that Murphy lost this football game. Franklin's the number 2 or 3 team in Western North Carolina. Franklin's a good team, but if you watch that game, you do not like how Murphy looked. Even though you're thinking they're not going to win the game, you're expecting them to look a lot differently than they did. They look flat, a lot of miscues, just like Robbinsville. But just like when you watch Robbinsville and watch this Murphy game, you watch some bright spots from Swain and some of these other teams. I didn't come away from this game Friday night thinking that Murphy was doomed. I thought that actually a lot of it looked fixable. Clem didn't play for Murphy. Young didn't play for Franklin. That kind of washed out. The biggest concern for Murphy is the line, offensive and defensive line. Defensive end wise, they've got to figure something out. They don't have a lot of depth, so you've got to ask some big guys to play every snap on offense and turn around and play every snap on defense. It's just what's going to happen for Murphy. We'll see if they're able to whip those guys into shape and come conference time, we'll see if they're able to fix those holes. But that's what this season of football is for. Figuring out where you need to put your guys, figuring out as a coaching staff, what you need to change, who you need to change, being where. If you need to change your scheme, if you need to change players to fit your scheme, whatever the case may be, I think coaching this year, and this was the next segment I wanted to talk about after we get done, since we're done recapping the games. But this is going to be the year we find out what coach can really coach, what coaches can really coach, and that's going to be the difference maker in who wins the conference and who does not. Because, roster numbers are down, depth is down across the board. Obviously, we saw, Cherokee's the only team with a win. We talked about their coaching in that football game. Coaching as a whole in the Smoky Mountain Conference this year, you're going to find out who your top coaches are. Whoever wins Coach of the Year this year is going to have really earned it, because we're going to see, you got to see who's going to put their guys in the best spot to win. There's things like, how are you hiding your weakness at linebacker? How are you getting your best athlete to football? What happens when your quarterback gets hurt in the first quarter, like Panther went down in Cherokee? How are you going to manage some of your linemen playing 80 snaps a game if they're going both ways? You've got to change your game plan, adjust, and I think this year we're really going to see the coaching in the Smoky Mountain Conference. That's the best coach teams are going to rise to the top this year, and that's usually always the case, but sometimes you've got talent that's just through the roof, and it doesn't matter if I'm coaching the team or you're coaching the team. That's not the case this year. These coaches are going to earn their very small paychecks this year. There's no easy button for anybody. Yes, Cherokee won, but they gave up 60 points to North Buncombe. So even though that was the bright spot, it's still not great. But like I said before, these teams need to take this non-conference season and develop their guys, put their guys in the right spot, and give their team the best chance to win football games. Looking at week 2, big slate this week. Good news for the Smoky Mountain Conference, coming off just one win last week. Everybody's a huge underdog, so that's not really what you want to see. Starting with Hayesville at Inca. Inca, 27.5 point favorite. Let's see if Hayesville can build on the Coker-Collins connection. See if defensively they can find anything. I do think Inca wins this football game. The 27.5 point spread is actually the smallest spread for any football game being played this week. Murphy is off. Hayesville at Inca, smallest spread of the week. I do think Inca wins this football game. I do think that they cover the spread. Smoky Mountain at Andrews, 35.5 point underdogs in Valleytown. Smoky Mountain, huge 35 point favorites. Not a great matchup for Andrews, who just gave up 290 rushing yards to Madison, facing a Smoky Mountain team that just put up over 315 yards against Swain. If Andrews can't seem to find something up front defensively, then we could see the same thing we saw in Swain County last week, this Smoky Mountain team. I think Smoky Mountain wins this. We could be looking at another week of no team, one team or no team in the Smoky Mountain Conference picking up a win. Pisgah at Swain. Pisgah, 29.5 point favorite. If you're Swain County, you got to give Caden Sawyer the ball. He averaged 14 yards a carry last week. We just talked about that. Got to give him more than 8 touches. Defensively, Swain's got to show up. You gave up over 300 yards on the ground last week. This is also where Coach Holt comes back to town. Pisgah defensive coordinator Sherman Holt was the head coach of Swain County last year. They canned him, and now he is the defensive coordinator at Pisgah. So there's some outlying factors coming into this football game that make it even more fun, even more buzz coming into this one. But Pisgah, 29.5 point favorites. I didn't see anything from Swain that would make me think that they are going to be able to cover this spread. I think Pisgah wins this football game. This Tuscola at Cherokee. Tuscola is a 28.5-point favorite. This is interesting. Cherokee just scored 66 points. We'll see if Dawson Panther's available to play this week. Robbinsville wasn't able to find anything offensively last week against Tuscola. I think Cherokee will be able to score. I do not think their defense is going to do as good of a job stopping Tuscola as Robbinsville did. So I think Tuscola wins this football game, but they do not cover 28.5-point spread. Last football game here this week, week 2, Robbinsville at Franklin. Franklin is a 30.5-point favorite. I do think that Robbinsville can compete in this one. Let's hear really quickly from head coach Lucas Ford. He'll talk about last week and then talk a little bit about this week against Franklin. All right, Coach Ford, got the first game in the books on the road, loss to Tuscola. What do you guys take away from that football game?
Our kids learned a lot about themselves, I think. In that first half, we really challenged them at halftime. Felt like that we played really soft, really timid, and scared. Played with no confidence, let's say. And felt like that our kids come out second half, played really hard. Our defense played pretty well. We gave up 273 yards total offense, I think. 2 touchdowns. I think one of the touchdowns come off of a 90-something yard fumble recovery for a touchdown for them. So we had some bright spots, though.
You knew going into this year you were very young, and you had guys that hadn't played varsity snaps all year come out and starting both ways and playing a lot. So, you learned a lot about those guys and where to put them going forward.
Yeah. We learned a lot about ourselves. We've shuffled some things around. Really green, inexperienced group that's trying to learn how to find leaders, and we're trying to figure out the pieces where they plug in the best to fit our team. We feel like we're getting there. Kids showed up, worked hard this week, so we're excited about that.
Back on the road Friday, headed to Franklin, unveiling their new stadium. What do you expect to see from the Panthers?
Probably one of the more balanced, solid teams in the mountains, and definitely that we'll see on our schedule. Really good up front. They've got some backs that run the ball really hard. Quarterback throws it well. Receivers are good, but their defense is really good. Their front seven is as good as you'll see. So it's going to be a fun game. I think our kids go over and compete, though. There's no doubt. I feel like we can compete with them. It's going to be a fun night, though, at Franklin.
All right, Coach. Well, good luck. Go Knights.
Hey, go Knights.
So, Coach Ford did not do himself any favors with Tuscola and Franklin on the road to start this season. But Robbinsville, like I said last week, showed some good stuff defensively. You've got to figure out something offensively. Got to get some better play out of your quarterback. These young guys that haven't played a lot of snaps, you need to see them progressing each week. That's what you want to see as a football coach. That's how you know you're doing your job, progressing each week. You need long sustained drives. You need more first downs. You need to get better on third down. If you can improve there against a good Franklin team, then you are definitely heading in the right direction. North Buncombe, last one, 32.5-point favorite. Just scored 60 last week. They're playing Rosman this week at Rosman. I do think North Buncombe is going to score too much for Rosman to keep up. Rosman is going to need to run the football. North Buncombe is going to run the football. But I think North Buncombe, I don't know. I don't know what to think of North Buncombe. I don't think they're going to cover 32.5-point spread, but we will see. I do think North Buncombe wins this football game. Final thought, a lot to watch this week. Don't just focus on wins and losses. Find out, how your kids respond. That's what you're looking for this week. Nobody had a great week last week, even Cherokee with the win against North Buncombe. Coach will tell you that they didn't have a great week. They don't ever want to give up 60 points. Nobody ever wants to give up 60 points. So week 1 tells you what your problems are. Week 2 starts telling you and the fans and the players whether you can fix those problems or whether it's going to be a long season. In a year where numbers are down, depth is down, and there isn't one team that's just overwhelmingly more talented than anybody else, the teams that can fix things the fastest and get some optimism, some belief in the locker room, and some things rolling right, that is going to be the team to watch in the Smoky Mountain Conference. And that's the way the Smoky Mountain Conference has always been. It's not always going to be pretty, but you're always going to get better. So who gets better this week? That will be the thing to watch. Don't expect the scores to be great. Don't expect a lot of teams to come away with, a lot of Smoky Mountain teams, if any, to come away with a win this week. But I do expect to see, because I know we've got some great coaches in this conference, I do expect to see each team take a step forward and fix some things going into week 2. Same thing week 3, week 4, week 5. Keep building brick by brick. Get ready for Smoky Mountain Conference season, which is what we're all waiting on. But thank you, everybody, for watching. Be back next week. Stay tuned to our socials. We'll keep you updated with scores and alerts and everything going on inside the SMC.